So for this week, as we've explained, our first topic is investigating reality and asking ourselves what is true spirituality. As I was just telling you guys, one of the the fundamental concepts of spirituality that we have to investigate is, self versus other, because our conception of self and how restricted that is, because both of you study Buddhism here, defines the extent to which we can either love others, or if our sense of self is very limited, if we define our sense of self in a limited way, we will start to hate others. And that's especially true when we start to realize that sometimes we have intentions that relate to our sense of self, like wanting to achieve personal goals, or that's like food or money, or any other like worldly desires, and we don't get them. We start to realize, oh, the truth of no self. And that definition of self also depends on not only on our own inner state, but how our culture defines it, right? So to start off, I think this video is really particularly pertinent. This one doesn't dive into the questions of self so much. Sorry. Pause it for a second. All right, cool. So what I was saying is this one doesn't dive so much into the self versus other question like the second video after that does, but this one's more about like investigating truth. And like let's say in the world of politics, like you have the liberals saying that one thing is like one thing about an issue like racism is true, and then conservatives say, oh, like the opposite is true, like for example, there's no such thing as systemic racism, and the opposite side says like, oh, there is such a thing, like so and so exists, there are cases of police brutality or whatever. And so that question is very fundamental to not only our internal investigation, but that bleeds out into social issues, where if we can't even agree on what is true, then there's no way that we can even address the question about how do we overcome suffering, how do we achieve enlightenment, how do we get these political parties to work with each other. Like those are far off questions if we can't even get the quote unquote facts right. Full screen. Okay. One sec, guys. Sorry, we had connection issues. It's okay. You guys can't see my screen, right? Can you guys still see my screen?
Okay. Yes, I can.
Okay. One sec. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna have to close all these tabs.
It doesn't look.
All right. There you go. All right. Better now? Just check it. All right. Cool. Yeah. You can still see it. Can you see the video here?
No, 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 no.
Nope. Okay. All right. Share screen. Okay. Yep. Okay.
There we go.
All right. Cool.
Excuse me, Austin, can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear any audio, and it's just moving slowly.
Daniel, how about you? Can you hear?
Yeah, it's the same for me. I can
Strange.
see the video, but I can't hear any audio. But I'm in Hawaii, so like my connection is like not necessarily the best.
Okay. You guys can hear me though, so
Yeah.
Yep.
that is strange. Okay. Gonna try replaying it now. Hopefully that might fix it.
Okay, sounds good.
Good. Cool.
It's not quite different, the same, I guess.
Sorry. What was it? What were you saying at the time?
I mean, the same like before. It doesn't work very well.
Okay. It's probably an issue with the video then. Like what I can do is like I can of course summarize videos like based on what I've watched, but yeah, like this is the first time we're running this. Like, you know, for anyone that's gonna be watching this, like after I'll be sending out recordings, you know, there is bound to be like technical issues, but I do try to, like the format of this course is that like whatever articles or videos that I've consumed, I do try to summarize the essential ideas. So basically, you know, what he was talking about, some of the things he dives into in terms of investigating the truth. The truth is, like one, what we talked about. How do we define boundaries of self versus other? And you know, with that is, you know, we think that the self is real. So what do we even mean by reality, right? Like, do we, you know, to scientists, like the established consensus is that, you know, like the Earth was created, what was it, like however billions of years ago, and then humans have only been around for like what 200,000 years, and then they have discovered the reality of that through scientific, you know, tools and techniques, like for instance, say carbon dating. So that's one way of investigating truth and knowing what's real. But for the subjective space, our sense of self, that's very hard to define. Like for example, we wake up every day and then we see this outside world, you know, and then we think that okay, these people and objects we're seeing, we assume them to be, you know, separate in a sense because of our separate sense of self. But the interesting thing about that is, you know, the truth in that aspect, the truth about our sense of self is not taught to us. It's implicitly, quote unquote, solidified by the culture, you know, and then like that's why we seek out things like external possessions or family and friends out of this sense of separation. But then also that, you know, that aspect of our daily experience is not really questioned. Like how flexible, what do we even mean by other? Like if I were to ask you something like we know that, you know, these things and objects and people exist apart from us, you know, how can we tell that is true? How do we know that's true? Not just a feeling of that being true, but how do we actually know for certain?
Okay,
Anya, do you want to go?
that sounds good.
Sure. Like this is kind of a question posed to you guys, right? Like, you know, we have this sense of self and other. It's an assumption, but it's not really socially taught. We kind of just go along with it collectively. How do we know that that sense of self or that sense of other that we have from our personal experience is true, rather than it just being an assumption? Yeah. Any volunteers? Both of you guys, how would you answer it?
Could you
Sorry, Austin. I didn't get.
repeat that one more
Oh,
time? Because
Sure.
again, I'm having connectivity, so I
Okay.
just needed maybe for you to repeat the question
Okay.
one more time.
So, yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah. So the sense of self and other that we have, how do we know that that is true? Like, apart from what society tells us or our personal experience, how do we know that that is true?
Okay. I don't know if I have an answer, but I mean, I have some thoughts. It's like, there's a few things. Like on one hand, how do we know well, I guess we say we know it's true because we experience it, and maybe there's some apparent truth or innate truth in our experience, or at the very least, there's the fact that we're experiencing is evidence enough for most of us for it to think it's true, even if we may not be able to know it's true. And then also there's the idea, secondly, that, well, even if it's not true that there's other, there seems to be a truth, like there is a thing happening here. I have influence over this particular body. I can produce a voice.
Mm-hmm. I see. Is that all for your answer?
I have is people also sort of one operating thing.
I see. Cool. And also, Tom, what do you think about this question? Like, how do we know our sense of self is real, is true?
I'm just thinking. How can I say that? I feel like I need to take more time. I'm not get ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You can like think about it. I'll like type the question in the chat soon after, and then you can take time to respond. But
Okay.
yeah, sure. So I do want to go back to a point that Daniel, you mentioned, which is that we believe it is true. One, from appearances, right? Like we have like feelings and perceptions about our sense of self. So one thing, one concept that we can come to mind is appearance the truth, right? Our appearance includes not just like not in the sense of illusion, but any form of experience is an appearance. Is that true or not? Is that real or not? And another point with that is influence. Do we believe that something is real because we have control over it? And then so that also raises the question, right? Like if we don't have control over it, does that sense of self cease to be a reality? And this is a very relevant question because in life, like, like we have all these personal desires related to the self, and a lot of the times we don't always get what we want, right? But in spiritual, practice like meditation or whatnot, initially, if you're not enlightened, you realize that, we don't get what we want. We don't have control over reality and consequently our sense of self, but that doesn't mean that it dissolves. If anything, it only gets stronger. And then because it gets stronger from resistance and craving and not getting what we want, we suffer. So the inability to control something or the inability to influence something does not make that thing go away. Sometimes based on our perception of reality and based on our goals and values, it may get stronger. So that becomes a big problem. And I always want to tie this back to social issues and not just get into the subjective experience of spirituality. Like, let's go into the issue of, let's say, gender inequality and the wage gap, which, in the US, like, it's still debated, like, whether it exists or not. Like, maybe if you're more conservative, you might say that, oh, like, the gender wage gap doesn't exist, and then the reasoning might be that, oh, like, most companies, like, do provide equal pay, and then, like, based on my personal experience, so that's like anecdotal, based on the companies I've worked for, and then, or they might cite like other like social reasons, like, oh, like, it is illegal or a crime under US law to not provide equal pay, right? And then sometimes, like, they may be right or they may be wrong, but the point is that, like, not acknowledging like whether something is true or not may not make it go away. Like, especially if that thing is real, like on a social level, but we choose to ignore it, not even like intentionally out of spite, but just like out of not knowing enough of the facts. And if that is consequently on the flip side, we assume that it doesn't exist, and it indeed doesn't, like, and indeed actually doesn't exist. Like, let's say you're a conservative, your assumption is that the wage gap doesn't exist, and then maybe you research and it turns out to be true, hypothetically. I'm not saying yes or no, but then that issue still doesn't fall away, because on, let's say you have liberals or leftists who disagree with you, and they start to say like, oh, like, the gender wage gap does exist, and then they may cite like sources or whatnot, or their personal experiences that you may believe is not true. And maybe even, if the facts turn out in your favor that it actually isn't true, then the issue still doesn't go away, right? So the whole point of this is that, like, we can't always trust our experiences, and sometimes we may be able to. And then, if we ignore an issue, sometimes it may go away, sometimes it may not, and it may only make it worse, right? And so the key takeaway is that, like, our sense of reality and our desires oftentimes are pretty much one and the same. So yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Anyone? If you want to talk, yeah, just like raise your hand.
My reflection is that human beings tend to believe in whatever interpretation of reality matches with our individual needs to give us some sense of pleasure or to keep us away from pain and stuff. And so whatever, yeah, we just kind of have that innate pattern of just believing what kind of fits into our needs and desires. So that's kind of my thought on that one.
I see. Cool. And Desha, what about you? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. The first one is yeah. How can I say that? Uh, I face a really, how can I say that? It's a big family problem. The people around me said that it was quite bad. You will get negative consequences of it. But at that time, I didn't really know what would be the result of it. I just follow it, but later I got to know that that is not the same as the people say. And also, how can I say that? I mean that I experienced it. The people said that that is bad. That you will get something bad from it, but that is not true. Yeah, that is I. How can I say that? I experienced it. That is. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry, Austin, you are mute.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So I can probably try and summarize that if possible. So what I understood was that like your family or your social circle said that if you do this certain thing that you said you wanted to do, like you'll face negative consequences. And then when you actually try and went and did it, it turned out that they were wrong. Right? Is that basically it? Okay. So like that really goes back to the point of, you know, our social circle oftentimes defines our reality, right? There's even that saying, like you are defined by, I'm probably botching this, but you're like defined by your like closest friends or something. I think that's how the quote goes, but that's very true, right? And that goes into another theme, that our social circle oftentimes is our values and our desires shape our experience of reality, right? So notice how like it's kind of a chicken or the egg situation. It's like does our social circle define our experience of reality, or does our does our experience of reality shape how we interact with our social circles? So it's a bit of a like it's a huge paradox. It's like you don't know. The huge issue with this is that, okay, where do I start then? Like, do I start by changing my personal experience? Like, if my mind is completely agitated, if I'm in a state of anger or large, like massive greed or whatnot, do I start by addressing that? Or do I try to change or influence my social circle and get them to, you know, like me or validate me or show me more love, you know? And so oftentimes, you know, sometimes we may not be able to change our experience if we have a bad social circle. Like, for example, let's say, take the example of marriage. If you're in, let's say, if you have an abusive partner, right? And sometimes, like, you want to get away and you want to just, like, get away from that, your partner, and then just, like, meditate or be calm or whatnot, but you can't because you're constantly being abused. You're constantly either not just physically, but, like, emotionally saying like, oh, like you're not good enough, you're not doing enough around the house, or maybe they're accusing you like, oh, you're seeing other people, and like even if whether it's true or not. So oftentimes if we want to use spirituality for social change, the main takeaway is that oftentimes, you know, it may not be as simple as, you know, addressing our inner state and then going out and changing the world. If you guys haven't heard of him, I recommend Jordan Peterson. Daniel, you probably know him. But he's a very prominent conservative author and professor. He's from Canada, but he basically got into prominence from his, tackling of identity politics and free speech laws, and that's a whole nother issue. But what his overall philosophy, one of his philosophies, is that you have to quote unquote clean your room first before you can go out and change the world. And then so he got into this huge debate, right? Like with like I think a communist author or something. It was a huge debate, and then some people say that he got quote unquote wrecked in that debate. Some people said that he had like a fairly balanced conversation. But the point is that like the counter argument to his narrative was that sometimes you can't do that. Your environment is so bad that you can't just like change your mind and elevate your consciousness and then go out and tackle these issues. Sometimes you have to tackle these issues. Otherwise, your state of consciousness will be so low. Or, I implore you guys to think of an alternative, which is that, okay, what if we address them simultaneously? We address both our sense of self and other, which is basically our sense of truth and reality on one hand, and then on the other hand, we address the systemic social inequalities that we're seeing in our environment. But the thing is, we address both while at the same time being conscious of how they interconnect, how they influence one another. And we think about what are the things that we're not seeing in the way they influence one another. That way, what's really good about it is that, if we get into, let's say, conversations with our friends and they're very adamant on saying that, oh no, that you have to fix yourself first before you try and do something in the world, like whether it's your parents or your friends. And another side is that, oh no, you have to like go out and change the world, like all this spiritual woo-woo stuff is like nonsense, right? You don't fall into that anymore. You see how they're actually two sides of the same coin, and like the whole coin, figuratively speaking, has to be addressed. Any thoughts on that? Just a question, like, do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, can I say now?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, when you say that influence, yeah, I feel like that's quite true. I was really influenced by a lot of people. I'm a little bit easy to be influenced by someone or something. Yeah, because that is because I feel like I don't have a self-awareness. Yeah, I think that's fine. And you know, and not only to me, but also I mean directly because of my own speech, because of my behavior, I influence the other. I mean, in my family, I have two younger sisters. That is quite funny. Most of my speech, most of my behavior can influence them because they are always watching me, and they, how can I say that? They follow me. They do what I do. The big example is it was about 2 morning. Yeah, I didn't wash my face and brush my teeth. I had breakfast, and they followed it. They did it like me. They even washed their face and they brushed their teeth. I got to know that, oh, we people influence each other. Not I didn't intentionally did it, but they got it from me. Yeah. And also, how can I say that? I conscious about that. How about me? Am I influenced by the other? Yeah, I had a lot of bad experience of being influenced by the other. But at the moment, I need to, as you said, we need to clean our room first, right? That's why I try to do like this. I try to clear my thought like, I mean, that is doesn't influence the other.
Sure. Nice. Yeah, I think that's very good. Because you said that like you are very influenced. You seem to be very influenced by other people, either in a positive way or in a negative way. But like, you know, I think a lot of us, like a lot of people share that anxiety of like Jordan Peterson talks about this concept of assertiveness, right? Like, am I not assertive enough? Like when people say like, oh, do this or do that, or like you need to believe this or what, not directly, it's often more subtle. You know, if we're not assertive and confident, like we probably just say, oh, go along with it, even if we don't want to, right? So that's another question, right? Even if we know something is true, you know, we may not fight for it. Yeah, like sorry, I'm waiting for the connection here. It's a little laggy, but okay, got it. Can you guys still hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, like, as activists, what we have to ask ourselves is that if we are not assertive, like, do we know, like, are there cases where we know something is true and then but we're too afraid to express that and create social change? That's like another huge question for like spiritual activists, because like sometimes we may be lying to ourselves, like we're not confident enough to express the truth, or otherwise we're not even lying, we're just too afraid, right? And so like even if we like, there's that question of even if we want to influence others, there's absolutely no way to do so. And then there's that added pressure of, okay, like how are my actions influencing those that look up to me, or whether that's oftentimes like younger people at the younger generation, so to speak. Like how am I influencing them? So it's tough, man. It's like it's really tough to have all of that on your mind and to do that like perfectly. But again, there's another concept, right? Like our job here isn't perfection. Like our job here like isn't to be perfect, but just to be conscious enough of these connections and relationships. I hope that's clear to you guys. How do you guys understand that? Daniel, do you want to go? Sorry, Daniel, one sec. The audio's lagging a bit on my end. Can you try muting and unmuting?
Testing.
Good.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Yeah, I understand the necessity of sort of balancing this idea of internal and external, balancing the idea of and subtle, and coming to a middle place of working on ourselves and attempting to change the conditions of our life. I've always struggled with the latter, with the change the conditions part. And so while I understand the general concept of what you're talking about balancing, I fail to really ground it in physical reality. And if I could talk a bit about this, maybe you can say something.
Yeah,
and
sure.
you as well, Tehar. Because like it would be in the case of a boss or a landlord who is passive aggressive, and they have a set amount of ignorance, greed, and hatred in their mind and in their behavior. So it's not only coming out in their mental space, but it's coming out in their energy that they're generating, and that's influencing me in my, and it's also coming out in their actions. in terms of our actions. And so there might be things that I can feel or be aware of. There might be portions of ignorance and hatred that I can feel coming from them or aware that they have. But my level of cognition, in terms of knowing what those things really are and knowing what's behind them, and really even knowing how to like change anything, feels very small for the idea of coming from the inside and getting to know who I am truly, in my subconscious, my conscious mind, seems more accessible than really trying to like change the behavior of someone else or some other government. Other than, you know, for instance, again, let's say that the passive aggressiveness is, let's they're passive aggressively trying to kick me out. Like they don't want me there, but they're being passive and aggressive about it. In this particular case, it causes me anxiety, and I can either be calm and work on my own anxiety and work on my own fear of death and work on my own fear of losing my security and losing safety, and I can come from the inside and work on those things. Or I can try and, you know, maybe, like you said, or I can maybe try and confront them and talk to them and get them to be less passive aggressive about what they want and their intents or something like that. But when you get to like a global scale, like with government, organizations and markets and things that like rule life, that kind of are, that feel outside of our spectrum of control, it just gets a bit overwhelming for me. I see more of a benefit to just working on the internal than the external.
Yeah. I just want to comment on that for 1 second. You make really great points, especially with the passive aggressive example. Because oftentimes, like we may, if we're in a space of conflict, especially with other people, we may have suspicions about their inner state. Like, for example, if your boss is like constantly nagging you or whatnot, we may know that, like they're probably, I don't want to say a greedy person, because again, that defining oneself and defining others, that's a very tricky thing, especially to place people in permanent categories of that person is a bad person, a greedy person, an angry person. The Buddhist concept of no self, right? And impermanence, like who people are always changing second to second, right? And so with the passive aggressive example, is the point is that through other people's actions, sometimes you can't even tell like who they are as a person because they put on a face, a persona, or like a personality is another word for it. And in the weeks to come, an issue we're going to be diving into is the personality versus the true self. This is a concept that I learned from a really, really advanced teacher named Anadi. He's actually very controversial for reasons of like abuse with his like students and whatnot. So he hasn't been so active. If you look at his articles, like if you scroll down below, his name is Anadi. His website is like taken offline. But anyway, the point is that like, you know, teachers like him and teachings like that really go into the gradations of personality and how sometimes people's personalities don't reflect their true self. And that gives you the space for change, to change others. Okay. All right. Daniel, you said you have to go in like 15 minutes or so?
Yeah, I have to move on to some other
Oh, no
things,
worries.
so I can't stay long.
Thank you so much for like, you really contributed to this discussion a lot today. I am ending at 7. for sure, or like maybe even a little bit before that. So if you could just hang out for like maybe 5 more minutes, like that would be great, but you definitely don't have to. We've covered actually the topics we dived into today are a lot more than what was actually intended just now, which is like the different ideologies that exist within true spirituality. But we also dived into things like not being able to know the true selves of others, and then how does that affect our capacity to change them, or like whether do we change others versus changing ourselves, or do we change both? Like we went into so many different tangents, and that's what this course is really all about. And this is how we raise the deeper questions and create more change. Okay, I do want to move on for a bit. If you have any quick comments, you can mention them. If not, I'll keep moving.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah. Should I move on, or do you have any comments?
Nothing much.
Good. Okay. All right. I'll keep going then. All right. So the next issue I'll be talking about is this idea of disagreements within spirituality. And one of the biggest ideological divides for spiritual teachers is how we engage with the world and worldly desires. There's one camp, especially from the Buddhist side, that says like eventually like the highest level is you renounce all worldly desires, all family life, live as a monk or a hermit or whatever, because desires lead to suffering and there's no way to create permanent change in the world. Like there's always going to be conflict, and even if you have the best intentions to control people or things, it may turn out very negatively, so that the pain you experience from that isn't worth it at all, right? Okay. Let me see. Checking the connection here. Is it still good? Can you guys? All right. I'm going to try playing another video. If this doesn't work, I'm just gonna I'm gonna have to think of a way to do this in the future. But all right, let me try this one. See if it works. Okay. Does it work? Okay. Daniel, does the video work for you?
It looks like you have it paused.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna try playing it. Daniel, could you please thumbs up if you can hear it? Can you hear the audio?
I can't hear the audio, unfortunately.
Weird. Okay. In that case, is the audio choppy, or can you not hear it at all?
It's like muted, so no sound at all.
Okay. Let me see. I don't know if there's an option here. Audio settings. Separate video. All right. Share screen. It's my Zoom window. Okay. All right. I will definitely fix this by next time. But like technical issues, like first time, that's bound to happen. But anyways, I can summarize this video again. What it's basically about, one of the things that he touches on is oftentimes, we like regular people who haven't renounced the world and like family life don't focus on asceticism, right? And so we think that these external possessions, the ability to change and control things and people, the happiness we get from that, we think that that is real, right? So there's this issue of reality. And so what happens is that, let's say we are spiritually motivated, we do try to meditate and go inward. You know, if we do feel a sense of inner peace or love or whatever, we think that that is less real than the things that we pursue. So that is a huge source of our suffering and delusion, right? So like what he's saying is that the world has things exactly backwards. That ties into our concept of reality, the reality of happiness, and like our priorities in the world. And because we think that the happiness we achieve from controlling things and people is real only when it conforms to our desires. But when it doesn't, it quickly crumbles. We see that happiness is fleeting. And then if we're conscious enough, we try to go inwards, we meditate, but then we also believe that because of our desire and ignorance is so strong, our inner happiness, our inner peace is also not stable for us. It's like there's no way out, right? Because we're so mired in ignorance. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Just a general agreement, I suppose. That we, as the title says, we're going in the wrong way. We're going forward, or at least we're going in the direction we think is forward. Actually, it's backwards. And the direction we think is backwards is actually forward. That's all I would say. I pretty much agree.
Sure. Do you, like, in response to that, do you think there is a way out? And what, like, based on everything you've learned, because you've also studied and practiced Buddhism, do you agree with the way out proposed by the Buddha of eventual renunciation and going inward and rejecting the world? Do you think that that is the way to ultimate happiness, or do you think that there is another way?
I don't think that that's the way, because it's not. It's a consequence of the way. All the renunciation and like how it looks is just a consequence. Everything is a result. Everything that we see is a result. So even the life of a monk and a renunciate is a result, and it's the result is just there because of the way. So the way is something else. The way isn't to become a monk or become an ascetic or anything like that. It's actually just to understand reality. And when you understand reality, that's going to look a particular way for you, which might look like a monk or an ascetic or something else.
I see. That's a very great point. Because of lighting in here, I could try and like brighten my screen for a bit, or fix the lighting here. 1 second. Cool. I think that's better now. Okay. Yeah. Can you guys see me? Right. Daniel, are you still there? Okay. Okay, so I think he's having a bit of connection issues. But yeah. If I may, I'll definitely respond to that question in general, because that's how you're still here. What he basically was saying was that, you know, like what he basically was saying. No worries. What he basically was saying was that these ways to happiness that spiritual traditions propose, like, for example, asceticism and renunciation, basically not having a family life, not pursuing sensual pleasures, that is a consequence of just investigating what is true and what is real, right? And so, like ultimately, the point is that we can't force ourselves to pursue that path if we don't naturally want to, or if we aren't inclined to do so. That may be a consequence of our spiritual path of investigating the truth, or it may not be, and we may pursue a different path. And with human ideals, with this movement, I personally do follow a more like life affirming, life supporting path in terms of starting a family and whatnot. Those aren't necessarily obstacles to enlightenment and an understanding of reality, which is in somewhat disagreement with Buddhism in terms of the highest stage of enlightenment, right? However, like with that said, with this movement, there is the option of maybe I'm completely wrong, and like Buddhism and what the Buddha said does turn out to be true. That ultimately we do have to forsake these like worldly desires and passions, and maybe the only way to fix social issues is to step away from them entirely. Yeah, if that makes sense. Do you have any comments on that? Yeah, do you have any comments on that?
I think you mean the about the happiness, or I mean the external pursuit, right?
Yeah.
The happiness, the community norms, about that.
Yeah, and also like, how does it like, should we pursue these things in order to gain happiness, like as the Buddha said or whatnot, or should we follow the Buddha's way of leaving these things and becoming a monk? Like, what is the right way?
I mean, I have a friend, and his mother is not his, her mother is a little bit ambitious. She wants her daughter to be a little, how can I say, get the, how can I say, the outstanding student, or get, I mean, be in the top of in the clubs. Yeah, I mean that. Even once I went to her room, and there was a coach. Her mother said that whatever you do, be on the top.
Yeah.
When I read that quote, her mother said, I feel like it's too tired.
Yeah.
And also, I asked her that, aren't you tired of being on the top? And she said that, of course. And I feel like she is influenced, or there's a lots of boundary for her. And also, I also tried a lot to be like that. And also, I really tried to have acknowledges from the friend and family and from my teachers. That was, that's a kind of such a messing up, and also that made me far away from being happy. And most of the time I feel like I was under them. I am not on my right place. I feel like that I was just looking up then, and I was always under them. That is really I feel like there's a lot of loads on my shoulder. But but now what I feel is what I want it and what I see is may not be quite different from them, and want it just to be me, not this, about not the people they said, not the people they want. Yeah, that's it. Being you know each day I try to know myself, and I try to give a time for it. I mean, in me time. Yeah. And also I ask myself what I want. I ask myself, why am I doing this? Because they like, or because I like? Yeah. That is, need to ask that question in my daily life. If not, I was influenced again by what they said and what they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true, right? Like oftentimes, we have these expectations from even our loved ones, and then we try to pursue them. And then if we fall short of them, oftentimes, originally when we set out to fulfill these expectations, we believe that we are in control of that. We are in control of our ability. But there are a number of factors that we don't see. Like, for example, in this world, that there are people born rich or there are people born poor. There are people, born, with a very high intelligence, like they're geniuses, right? And like there are also people born with like disabilities, right? And so, yeah. Are you okay there? So, okay, cool. So the point is that like people are born unequal, and then that dictates like our abilities and like how easy it is for us to fulfill other people's expectations. But then oftentimes, if we fall short of that, the only alternative we have is asking ourselves, what do we want? Right? And so maybe, the question here, we were talking about Buddhism and like, is it, is becoming a monk or a nun the way to true happiness and like enlightenment, right? As the Buddha taught. And so the question is that maybe doing that is not about rejecting the world, but about just giving ourselves the space to ask, what are our true values beyond what other people want us to do in this life? And maybe that's why people step away from things like pursuing a family for a while and work on their values. And then maybe there are lots of people who come out of being a monk or a nun, right? Like if we so if to say it in Burmese more plainly, like Ponji Tidashi no Wudani Yubian Twada. So the point of that, like, just to make it more understandable, is maybe they do that so that they can understand themselves, like becoming a monk, and then when they go out of that monk life and return back to the world, they are more strong and more assured in themselves. And then going back to what you said earlier, they can't be influenced as easily by other people anymore. And they are a better role model for the people who look up to them, because they have a calm mind and they aren't filled with greed and hatred and ignorance, right? So asking ourselves what we truly want in this life, beyond what other people expect, allows us to not be influenced, and in turn, that way we can truly change the world. So that's a major takeaway, but that is also our personal choices may be different. Some people may want to renounce the world and become a monk forever and like forsake all of these like political and social issues, or forsake love and family life for sensual pleasures. Other people may want to go into that space, the worldly space, totally, and not care about spirituality at all. And then maybe others may seek to combine the two and create a path that we probably haven't seen much of in the 21st century. And what does that entail? And how does that play into what our religious and spiritual teachers like the Buddha say is the highest goal? Are there, like, is that wholly true or not? I'm not arguing in favor of one thing or another. I have my personal desires. I personally want to combine the two, but it may be different for you. I may be wrong, but the point of human ideals with this movement is to facilitate an open discussion and be aware of how these spaces interact with each other, if that makes sense. So do you have any comments on that?
I have a question. Yeah, that's about.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
I didn't clear that about the Buddhism and spiritual before, but after I checked out your videos and other videos, I feel like Buddhism is about spiritual, right?
Yeah, of course.
But what what I understood was Buddhism is just to like how to say, just for pray, for give some like giving the light and giving the flowers. Um, and I also said that I don't know clearly about Buddhism, and also it was just a blind. I was just a blind. How can I say that Buddhism, right?
Yeah, like
uh,
a follower.
yeah. I don't
Sure.
know what does a Buddhist mean, and because of the lot of bad experience, I got to feel like there's nothing, and the something not very how can I say that, not very conscious about it, and
Mm-hmm.
also bad uh, uh what I how can I say that, I thought, no, I mean I judged myself uh, about the Buddhism. In Bali we say ngavatila, right?
Yeah, sure.
They said not to kill and not to steal, and there is some lot of things. But and in scientifically, no, not scientifically. How is it, logically or something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I try to connect them, and if I can connect them, I believe it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the how can I say, stereotypes in Buddhism, and most of them I try to judge them again. Yeah, I
Right,
don't know what does the Buddhism mean, and because of you, I got to know that it's about spiritual, it's about knowing oneself, it's
right.
about oneness, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Um, that also, you raised another good point about sometimes what the average follower knows about their own religion may be very, very shallow, very superficial is another word for it, right? But then once we actually dive deeper, sorry, alarm. Okay. Anyways, so when we dive deeper, sorry, what were you saying? Oh no, it's not. No, 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 that was just my phone. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. But like what I was saying was that what the average follower knows about their religion, um, may be very superficial and not have the complete picture, right? And so when we dive deeper, a lot of the times these religions, like Jesus Christ or the Buddha, the original purpose was to escape suffering. But then it's turned into this ritual of like giving flowers and praying, and I mean they have their place, mind you, but it's that going inward and that question of how does going inward and renouncing the world relate to very major issues, permanent issues of social change, not only in the US but in Myanmar as well, right? Like for example, we have this issue of democracy uh, in Myanmar and free speech, right? We also have like the NLD versus like the military party, and then that also relates to the issue of, with democracy, we want free speech in Burma, but we're not necessarily 100% there yet, like the United States. So that goes back into the Buddhist issue of not self, right? Because we have these actors in, like, let's say, the government or whatever party that don't really agree with Western ideals of free speech, that shows us the fact of not self. Like sometimes we are not in control of our outside government or our social system, and we may have to change ourselves first. And sometimes we can't change ourselves because our system is constantly oppressing us, constantly restricting us, preventing us from saying what we want. Right? So the point is that it's not just like I talked a lot about US political issues because Danya was on here as well, but in Myanmar, it's just a different form. These political issues, like in Burmese, like like that also relates to Buddhist principles and meditation. Everything is interconnected. And it's also very complex. The two tie together, and we always have to think about how does that affect our lives? And again, what do we truly want? Human Ideals is a platform for that, complete exploration. And we may go on a different path, or we may unite into a single vision. There's a lot of flexibility. But with that, I think, yeah, this session has been really good, especially in terms of the questions and comments you guys raised, both of you. I hope to have more people on next time, but yeah, do you have any more comments on that? Because I'm pretty much, yeah, the material, I've covered most of the material for today. So do you have any comments?
Nothing much.
Okay, sure. Yeah, with that, this is pretty much the end of week 1. It went pretty well. I would have liked more people to show up, but hopefully with this recording, people will know what the vision of Human Ideals is all about, some of the questions we raise, the way we dive into these connections between spirituality and social change, how much control we have. So yeah, for all of you watching, again, please like and follow our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well, where we will be posting these weekly sessions in the future. And if you want to join this class, please send your email address to our Facebook Messenger at the Human Ideals Facebook page, or we'll add you to our spirituality group. So with that, I conclude this session, and really, Natan, thank you so much for attending, and I hope to see you again next time.
Okay.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay.
That's it.
Yep, that's it.